On Network Africa today, Zambians head to the polls to cast their ballots in presidential and parliamentary elections. South Africa regains the title Africa's largest economy. Where does that leave Nigeria? Plus, with the Olympics underway in Rio, the Congolese refugee community cheers on its nationals. Welcome to the program. I am Amarachi Ubani. It is decision time in Zambia as citizens head to the polls to determine whether President Edgar Lungu gets a second chance in office or if his rival Hakainde Hichilema of the UPND becomes president instead. Now, it's really important in this election that the presidential candidate who is declared winner gets more than 50% of the votes to avoid a runoff. In the last election, President Lungu won by less than 28,000 votes. Reporters on the ground say there is high turnout of voters at the polls, with long, calm, orderly queues at the polling stations. There was a bit of change to the electoral rules, where women wearing nail varnish or false nails were requested to have them removed before going to cast their ballots. The Electoral Commission later circulated posts on social media saying women with painted nails and or false nails could vote.
My vote is a decision-making vote. I've listened to all the candidates, and I think I'm making the right choice.
And I expect that the candidate that I'm voting for is the one who's going to bring a lot of good change to the country, economically especially.
Staying with elections, President Edgar Lungu has cast his vote. He did so soon after polls opened. He later said on Twitter that he was happy with the voter turnout and would be returning home to await the results to be announced peacefully. The 59-year-old lawyer became president in January 2015 in an election called after the death in office of President Michael Sata. He had served in the late president's government as Minister for Justice and Defense. He has been quite popular, though, since he ordered a national day of prayer last year to help combat the country's economic problems. Meanwhile, also at the polls today was opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema, who cast his vote in the capital, Lusaka. The 54-year-old economist has contested in nearly all elections in Zambia since 2006. But keeping his political career in view, on the side, he has a solid track record in the private sector and is known to be Zambia's second largest cattle rancher. He does seem to enjoy a lot of popularity with younger voters. And monitoring the elections in Zambia is former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, who's leading the African Union election monitoring mission. Early this morning, he witnessed the opening of a polling station and the start of voting in Lusaka, the capital. He also watched as President Edgar Lungu cast his vote. Also monitoring the elections are 56 short-term European Union election observers to reinforce its team and the country's 10 provinces. They are expected to follow election day in numerous polling stations so that they're able to get reliable picture about how voting, counting and tabulation of the votes will be conducted. The EU mission later tweeted, "We are happy to see that so many people coming out to vote. It shows that Zambians value their democratic rights." The VOA's Anita Powell is in Joburg, which recently voted in local government elections where the ruling ANC experienced its biggest loss on major political stronghold territories, though it won the election. She's been closely monitoring the polls in Zambia. Anita, thanks for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you so much, Amarachi.
Now, from what you've heard and from colleagues on the ground, what's been your observation of the polls in Zambia so far?
Well, the latest update we got from the Electoral Commission was this morning. It's important to note that polls are still open right now as we speak. But what they said this morning was that it appeared to be going smoothly. Most of the polling stations opened on time. There were fairly long queues, and that they didn't report any problems other than the nail varnish issue, which they did sort out, as you said. And also they chastised some younger voters for taking selfies with their marked ballot papers. But other than that, at this point, there have been no reports of major problems.
Well, does it seem like President Lungu enjoys a lot of support in the country?
You know, that is the million naira question. That's a very good question. He does have quite a bit of support. Does he have the 51% that he needs to win this election without a runoff? Nobody is willing to put a bet on that. It's going to be close. He does have enough support to make this a very tight race, but I don't know if he has 51%, and I think we won't find out until the votes are counted.
Yeah, and his main opposition candidate, Hakainde Hichilema, has run for office in every presidential election since 2006. What are his chances today?
Well, he is posing some stiff opposition to President Lungu. As you recall, in the last election, he lost by less than 2%. So he does have a very good chance. He's running on a really motivating platform that many people are supporting him for. He's saying that he wants to bring foreign investment to Zambia, which, as you recall, is a landlocked country with rich stores in copper. So that investment would help improve the economy. His campaign motto, in fact, is HH will fix it. So it remains to be seen how he does, whether he gets that coveted 51%. And it's just too close to call.
And the economy really does play a big role in this election. How concerned are the people about what's going on?
Well, we have a few trends that are really important in Zambia right now. One is, as I said, it's a copper-rich nation. The copper price has gone down. Also, food prices have gone up because we've had a drought. So you have this rather horrible confluence of copper prices being very low, food prices being very high, people being very hungry, farmers suffering because of the drought. So that is, I think, the main issue on most Zambians' minds. How are we going to get out of this? And so I think that's really important. And you know, the prospect of some instability, maybe some violence, like we saw in the run-up to this election, could further destabilize. It could scare off investors. So I think everybody's hoping, including Lungu and Hichilema, from both sides, that we have a peaceful election and things can return to normal in Zambia, and maybe we can right some of these problems.
And it's at this point, I think it would be nice to get a little background on Zambia and how this election could impact the economy, which has been hit by droughts, as many southern African countries have this year especially. It's been described by the UN as the worst in 35 years.
Yes, and in coming months, Zambia is going to see record prices of maize, which is the staple food there. So we could see things getting even worse in Zambia. As I said, it's a landlocked country. It borders some similarly afflicted countries, including the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's not in great shape right now. And so this is the background against which people are trying to decide who they need to lead. Lungu's been criticized for not having a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not having a lot of plans and not having a lot of leadership. So maybe some voters feel that it's time for a change. But Hichilema is not exactly new to the scene either. The other interesting thing in this election is that two of Zambia's presidents have just suddenly up and died. Wow. During their terms. And Lungu is not well either. He has a chronic issue with his esophagus. He's been hospitalized here in South Africa. This could be further destabilizing if he does need to leave the country again to seek treatment. So there are a lot of interesting issues that make this election in this very small African country much more interesting.
And it does seem, Anita, that, you know, Southern African politics in Southern Africa seems to be a little shaky for some reason. Parties were expecting to have done well. We saw what happened in South Africa, and now we're looking at what's going on in Zambia. It does seem like politics is a bit shaky in Southern Africa. Tell us more about that.
Well, I think the country that you left out is Zimbabwe, which is facing unprecedented protests. The ZANU-PF, the Party of Liberation, is being criticized by, you know, venerable war veterans who have called Mugabe a dictator. I talked to some analysts about this today, and basically a lot of this is that these liberation movements, once they become ruling parties, they sort of lose the plot and lose touch with the younger voters.
All right, Anita, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Really appreciate your reporting on the elections in Zambia. When we return, a health crisis brewing in the Central African Republic over a cholera outbreak. Stay with us.